It's my one life, and I give it everything I got. I am music. I am sports. I am the culture. So quick news break with yours truly. I'm the one and only. I go by the name of Mr. TALIAFERRO. Please make sure y'all following your what? Your boy. It's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and it's all at itsmrtaliaferro. They love that. Your boy. Man, microphone check 1, 2. What is this? I got on my phone this morning, clicked on podcast, and found out that the JBP boys were finally back to business. I've made it pretty vocal on this platform that my favorite podcast is Joe Budden podcast, or it used to be. I ain't gonna hold you. Over the last couple months, the pod's been mid. Now, I'm not gonna go give you a rap like the dude who makes the raps about the podcast does. I'm just going to say this. The pod ain't been hitting like it used to. And again, to be fair with y'all, like, I know people don't like talking on this. Hip-hop media ain't been what it used to this year. It just ain't been a lot going on. I think because of COVID, a lot of artists been scared to drop music. I think a lot of news and just stuff comes out of people performing. Ain't been a lot of performances over the last calendar year. Stuff starting to pick back up. But with that being said, Mal and Rory, who have been away from the pod for like the last month or so, right? I kind of got used to icing this when I did check out the pod. But Mal and Rory made their triumphant return to the Joe Budden podcast. And boy, that thing got tense. If somebody asked me what I thought about the pod, I'm going to tell y'all one word. That thing was tense, boy. Here are my, and this is not a think piece. I'm not the think piece guy. I know a lot of people are going to tell y'all 1,004 things. That's not my position in the culture. I listen to the podcast as a consumer. Here were my thoughts. Actually, first off, I'm going to read some of what Mal and Rory had to say about what happened, where they were at, and, you know, just what went into them taking the break. So we'll start there, and then we'll end with a little bit of TALIAFERRO commentary. Not a think piece, though, just a little commentary. So Rory kicked things off by telling his side of the story by saying, essentially, me and Mal and Joe met last week. There was a lot of grown man feelings. It was a lot of uncomfortable. It was a lot of feelings for 3 grown-ass men in the living room. And Rory did go on to explain, I'm summarizing in this part, essentially, Joe asked him and texted him about a month or so ago, could he take a break from the podcast? That's how this all got started. And apparently, Joe relayed the information to Mal. Mal and Joe disagreed on Joe just coming out of the woodwork saying, I'm suspending Rory, essentially. Joe and Mal went back and forth, and if I'm reading the podcast correctly, it looks like things went left when Joe Budden told Mal the podcast is none of your business. So here's what Mal had to say on his return podcast. He said, I want the podcast to work, but more importantly, is there still respect among us as men? Men, the business is just a business. We can fix that or we can't. But as long as we still respect each other, personally, I feel like we can resolve anything. But if there's no respect, then there's nothing to talk about. My thing is, does the show go on without trying to resolve something first? I felt some type of way about that because to me it's saying something. It's saying like, yo, you're replaceable. Again, obviously, you can go listen to the entire podcast to get much more context than what I gave y'all. I was giving you a brief summary. But essentially, for those who are wondering, yes, the podcast went left. Kind of like how Joe said, because he asked Rory to take some time off. The pod had got a little tense between Joe and Rory. And then it went left with Mal and Joe when Joe told Mal the pod ain't your business. Yeah. Just listening to the pod personally, it felt like they needed a couple more weeks to figure things out. I'm not going to say it was a rush because these gentlemen were a month away. And look, bro, if you ever been in a situation with your homie, your friend of yours, it's awkward out the gate. It takes somebody making a couple jokes to smooth things over. I can only imagine mixing business in with that. I will say this, though. I don't think Joe Budden's position has changed. I don't think Mal's position has changed. Rory obviously comes from a background of working corporate jobs or, working in music jobs. I think he gets the business a lot more than a Mal would. Obviously, we know Parks gets it as well from listening to his perspective. At the end of the day, Mal won't respect. And I think what he did was honorable. And I'll give him that. I think what he did, saying, nah, bro, I ain't rocking. I thought that was an honorable move to say I ain't rocking out without my co-host. I thought that was honorable. To me, the person that looked the worst was Joe. And I'll stand on that. I don't. Look, man, I'm going to put it to you like this. So we talked about on this platform how oftentimes it seems like Joe Budden has a lot of friends, from Maul to Rory, Ice and Ish, Parks. I don't want to use the term yes man, but they are very laid back in comparison to Joe, which creates for a dichotomy. It feels like a lot of times when you listen to the pod, it feels like Joe is cringeworthy sometimes listening to a man talk to his friends the way he does. Obviously, all these people are used to it because everybody Joe brings in the room, he commands the room in that way. I personally couldn't do that one. That's just me personally. My ego's too strong for that. Seems like Maul, Rory, Ice, Ish, all them gentlemen are cool with the way Joe talked to them. So we talk about how there is a downside if you're a Maul or Rory or Ice and Ish to allow a man to talk to you like that. One thing I've never talked about on this platform is the downside for Joe Budden. Because I want to be fair to Joe in this regard. If you keep men around you that oftentimes agree with what you got to say and don't push back, I'm not going to use the word yes men, but don't push back oftentimes on a lot of things and just cool, sometimes what you do for people can be taken for granted. That was my feeling listening to Joe Budden. Because look, he apologized for the comment he made to Maul, but at the end of the day, Joe's position was, y'all put me in a rough spot. And I get that part of the business. What I would like for Joe Budden to understand is, if I'm reading them correctly, I'm going by what they said. This ain't no think piece. I'm using the pod that they gave. I'm doing exactly what they do on a podcast for 3 hours a week. It just involves them this time. They're the topic of conversation. If I'm reading Joe Budden correctly and listening to what he got to say, he doesn't understand the concept of the only reason why things got stirred up. There are two things. Number one, Joe invited Rory to his hands, and then Rory started doing it back, and he ain't like that. And the second and the more important thing is, Joe kept talking about on the pod, the latest one, he kept talking about how Maul and Rory were not acting like this was a place of employment. He kept saying that. He kept saying that, what corporate job can you leave and come back? And this is where Joe lost me this morning. Joe, you do realize not only is there a company standard for employees, there's also a company standard, no matter where you work, for employers, managers, owners, whatever you want to call yourself. The network is yours. It says Joe Budden Network. It says Joe Budden Podcast for a reason. But you do realize there is a standard that you have to uphold as well. And that's where I think Joe lost me. That's why I was like, I could never come out and be that guy. And for him to not understand where Maul was coming from, even still now, looking back on it a month later, it would tell me all I need to know is Joe Budden as a boss. Yes. Can you go a month without yes, you cannot go a month without showing up to your job, not calling people, not figuring things out, right? There's an opposite side to that Joe Budden doesn't seem to. As an employer, you have obligations as well. If you keep talking to people crazy, I'm talking about just bluntly come to work, randomly suspend somebody, and there's not like a protocol, there's not paperwork, documentation that's been noted of each offense that led to the suspension, you look crazy. So yes, there are obligations from employees. There's also obligations from employers as well, is what I'm trying to say. But I think the part where we lose that at, from Joe's perspective, and this is what me or you don't know. I'm not a friend of theirs. I'm not trying to think piece this. What I don't know is how much Joe has done for Maul, Rory, or any of his friends in the parks, any of his friends in the past. And I feel like he looks at it like, y'all should be blessed to be here. How I've had to carry this ship and put y'all in a position. Y'all should just be blessed to be here. And if that is Joe's position, I'm not going to argue that because I don't know the dichotomy of their friendships, of their business relationships. I would just say this, Joe, that's when it's beneficial to a person to not have people who don't push back at you. The other side of not having people who don't push back at you oftentimes is they also don't give you the credit that you seemingly deserve because they're just chill people. And again, maybe oftentimes when you want to command a room and talk over people, you get your way. You do that. It's your shit. But the opposite side of that is when you're looking for validation, credit, and for people to say, yo, nah, Joe was the guy that did for me. Joe was the guy that put me in this position. You don't get that either. I think that was, for me, that's what I took away from the pod. Happy the brothers back. Hope they get some chemistry back. I thought Ice and Ish had really found a groove from what I was listening to. The podcast had just become missable. Like if I listened to the pod, great. If I missed it, okay, it was what it was. Because I invested my time, no pun intended, my love and support into into some content, into a product for years. And when two of the main characters of that platform leave, I don't see myself investing that amount of time into other people, establishing rapports, characters. So for me, I'm happy that Maul and Rory are back for the simple fact of, as a listener, which is all I am, a consumer, it's easier for me to catch back up with storylines that we left off at. Whose favorite artist is this, that? I like where Ice was going. Ice was taking that thing down south. And y'all know I'm rocking with that. But y'all let me know what y'all thought about the Joe Budden podcast return episode. JB Boys back to business. Yeah, man, I know I gave y'all a lot. Y'all let me know what y'all thought about my comments in the comment box below. Thank y'all so much for the time, love, and support is what I don't take for granted. Good thing is I'm a one-man shop, so if I leave this bad boy, this shit is over with. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. All right, I'm out. Catch full new episodes of FERRO's music-based platform every day only on YouTube at It's Mr. Taliaferro. You can also find clips, updates, giveaways, and more on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, also at It's Mr. Taliaferro. For all basketball fans, make sure you tune in to FERRO's daily highlights, reports, and commentary on YouTube at HoopsFERRO, and even more updates on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at HoopsFERRO as well.